Yesterday morning, it was announced, actually, when I woke up and the first thing I saw when I looked at my phone was that Hamas had decided to do a sneak attack, like when Israel least expected it, right? So by Israel, I mean the state of Israel. And there's some questions I have about that too. We'll get into that in a second. People broke free. I want to first discuss this statement from Hamas, and then we're going to go back through a little bit of history before we get into the events that actually have taken place. Statement from Hamas: we are opening a battle that will expand, escalate, and deepen, and its goal is the freedom of our people and their sanctities and our right to be free and secure in a free and independent homeland. If the whole world were silent, we would not remain silent about the desecration of our sanctities, the attempts to desecrate Al-Aqsa, and the attacks on Al-Aqsa. We will do everything necessary to preserve the dignity, existence, and freedom of our people. There will be no talk even about the details of the dead and captured Israelis and our prisoners in prisons whose freedom is at hand. That was the statement from Hamas. Before we get into the events that started about 24 hours ago, I want to take you back just through a little bit of history, because I think what people have to remember is that the land belongs to the Palestinians. It was their land. So let's start with that. Now, I want to start with this clip here from Dana. Dana posted this. I thought this was very good for people to see. And for those who have questions, let's look at the land laws. 1917. This is Palestine. It's not Israel. So you can see green is the Israeli settlement right here. You can see yellow is Palestine. This is Palestine before the creation of Israel. Let's move forward. 1946, World War II begins, Jewish settlement begins. So you can see the green pockets here start to appear in Palestine. That's 1946. 1947. That didn't take long, did it? That was only a year. Look at the settlement now. So obviously there's more green, less yellow. So it says the UN divides Palestine. (1948, 1949). So you can see now it's to the point where here's Gaza over here. And as you can see, it's almost completely green now. That's 1948, 1949. Israel occupies 77% of the land and declares independence. Let's go on. 2012. You see this? Israel launches massive air campaign on Hamas in Gaza. So as you can see, the parts of Palestine are almost completely gone. And I think that's the last one, 2014. Israel launches massive air campaign on Hamas in Gaza. Watch this. The future. Notice that in the future, if this continues, in the future, Gaza will also be green. Israeli settlement. The Palestinian people have been pushed and pushed further and further out. Now, I show you this to say this. I want you to put yourself in the Palestinian shoes. Imagine if I came to your town and I brought some peeps with me. I came to your town, and not only did I come there and say I'm going to live there, but I came there and I said, yeah, this is your land. This is now my land. I'm going to take that land. You don't have land anymore. And over time, more people come and we occupy more of the land that was once yours. to the point where you are basically reduced to a small portion of the country that was yours. So we tell you, you can stay if you want, but now we have the majority of the land. Oh, and by the way, you can only move from point A to point B. We're going to put up a border. We're going to put up this fence around our territory that we stole from you and the territory where we're going to put you. And we are creating an open air prison so you cannot move beyond those bounds. How would you feel? How would you feel if, to add on to that, I tell you, you can still have electricity and water, but we are going to minimize how much you get to have because it's our land now. 95% of your water is going to be dirty. Maybe we'll give you 40% electricity. Oh, and by the way, for the people who choose to try to rise up against us that are part of your people, anytime they try to rise up, we're going to come after all of you. Now they'll tell the media and tell everybody else, yeah, you know, we had to bomb that building because Hamas was hiding out there. Next thing you know, that building goes from Hamas was hiding out there to a hospital, a school, journalists, kids being beaten in the street, Palestinians killed just because the land is not theirs. What you have is settler colonialism. So what you saw happen yesterday, let's go ahead and pull it up. That fence, that open air prison that I was telling you about, the fence is being torn down. The people.
الله أكبر جربوا يا جماعة الله يرحم الجدار روح الله أكبر أيوة الله أكبر الله أكبر.
These are the people, these are the Palestinian people trying to break free. How would you feel if you had to live that way? Now, Anya talked about this when she was on the show recently. She was there. She was there in Gaza. She said, I visited Gaza in 2018 and saw for myself the open air prison that Israel has imposed upon millions of Palestinians for over 15 years. Every act of resistance in Palestine is justified. Israel's existence is an unprovoked attack on humankind. Look at this. This is when Anya was with RT. This is back in the day.
The Gaza Strip, electricity shortages have already pushed hospitals near collapse, forcing doctors to deny patients basic medical procedures. Now imagine you have a disease like cancer. You have to get through this gate, as well as the heavily militarized Israeli-controlled border fence on the other side, just to receive life-saving treatment. According to a new report released by human rights groups, last year the Israelis denied a record amount of permits, leading to the deaths of over 50 Gaza residents.
This is just medical permits for Palestinians to go to the hospitals to get treatment. And they probably have a higher rate of those cancers, like Anya was pointing to, because if you're giving people dirty water, obviously that's going to increase the chance of them to have illness and disease. Let's continue.
According to a joint study released by several human rights groups, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and Gaza's Al-Mazan Center for Human Rights, Israel approved only 54% of permits for medical appointments in 2017, the lowest rate since the World Health Organization began keeping track of the data. Zakia Tafish's husband, Jamil, is one of those numbers.
2 months before July of last year, my husband went to the hospital and they discovered that his cancer had returned, and they started to give him treatment and medicine, but it didn't work. They said he needs surgery, and every time he got an appointment to get surgery, the hospital postponed it because they said the only solution is to leave Gaza. But he wasn't.
That part right there. Not even wanting to give the people treatment because they are Palestinian. The only solution they told them was to leave.
Able to leave Gaza because he wasn't allowed. He got a referral to a hospital in Jerusalem, and every time he wanted to travel, the Israeli border was closed. Every time he wanted to travel, they closed the border and make an excuse.
For Jamil Tafish, the denial of this life-saving permit was only the final chapter in a long struggle with Israeli control.
During the 2014 war, we evacuated the house to my daughter's place in downtown, and when we returned, we found it completely destroyed. My husband became consumed with rage, and his cancer came back. We became homeless, and when we finally rebuilt the house, he wasn't able to enjoy it.
In a short while, I'll be leaving the Gaza Strip. As a member of the foreign media, it wasn't difficult for me to secure this pass from the Israeli government, guaranteeing my travel to and from the territory. But for too many Palestinians, even those diagnosed with life-threatening illnesses, there's no such magic pass, only a death sentence handed down by an ever-present occupation.
What people have to understand, because some people will ask this question, why not give them their own hospitals and their own all this so they don't have to worry about getting through that border, right? So in other words, you mean separate but equal? Because if we've learned anything in reference to separate but equal in this particular country, we've learned that yes, you can be separate, but it won't be equal when you're the minority, because the majority has all the resources. The state of Israel, they control the water. They control the air. They control all of it. The electricity, they control it. The Palestinians don't control anything. So this is why I used to tell people, even with the two-state solution, this whole, oh, let's just be separate but equal, that doesn't work. It doesn't work when you're in the minority and you don't control the resources. Now, there's been argument over whether or not people who are facing some type of occupation, occupied people, whether or not people who are occupied have the right to resistance. And that's the question I want you to hold on to. Do occupied people have the right to resistance?
And make an excuse.
For Jamil Tafish, the denial of...
I don't know why that did that. Ronnie Khaled came in and she said, some argue it's reckless for Palestinian groups to launch resistance operations because of the violent Israeli reaction it provokes. But Israel is constantly engaging in overwhelming violence with or without resistance to it. And I'm actually going to show you an example. I think that is an excellent point that Rania makes. She goes on to say here, calling Palestinian resistance reckless is essentially telling Palestinians to sit down and submit to being treated worse than animals and to never stand up and defend or try to liberate themselves. What some people have been saying is that the Palestinians should just sit there and accept what has been happening to them. They should just accept being occupied. They should just accept that their land is no longer their land. Is that the case? I ask you, do people who are occupied, do occupied people have the right to resistance? What if someone came in and tried to occupy you? When we look at the conflicts, when we look at the battle, you will see that it's the Palestinian lives that are being lost when you look at the two. Here's the comparison right here, year by year. The human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, death/injuries, documented by the United Nations. Look who's losing the most people. Surprise. 2008, Palestine, over 3,000, Israel over 800. 2009, Palestine, over 7,000, Israel over 100. 2010, Palestine, over 1,600, Israel over 100, 185. 2011, Palestine, over 2,200, Israel over 130. And why is this happening again? Again, who has the resources? 2012, Palestine, over 4,900, Israel over 500. 2013, Palestine, over 4,000, Israel over 157. 2014, over 19,800 Palestinians. Israel over 2,700. 2015, over 14,800 Palestinians, Israel over 330. 2016, Palestine over 3,500, Israel over 220. 2017, Palestine over 8,500, Israel over 174. 2018, Palestine over 31,000, Israel over 130. 2019, Palestine over 15,600, Israel over 133. 2020, Palestine over 2,700, Israel 61. When people say, let's compare, this is the comparison people need to show. It's obvious who's having the most casualties. One of the things that was interesting to me, and you'll see this speech from Joe Biden in just a second, is that one of the things that came up multiple times by different politicians on social media is that how dare they have attacked Israeli people on a holy day as if this did not happen to Palestinian people. I want to remind you that it did. And all those politicians were silent when it happened. Q Anthony says every Ramadan, the IDF storms Al-Aqsa Mosque, smoke bombs the place, cracks open the skulls of worshipers, and zip ties women and children face down on the ground. Time to grow up, kids. Oppressed people are not your plush toys. And I want to show you an example. The West is sleeping when Israeli forces were beating Palestinian women at Al-Aqsa Mosque. So for the people who are pretending like this was only happening to the Israelis on their holy day, I want to remind you, this happened to the Palestinians on theirs. We'll have to refresh. There we go. Sorry, Twitter's like that sometimes. See this? So you'll see, I'll show you from the beginning what happened to her. You see that? What is she doing wrong? These are Israeli forces. What does she do wrong? This is the kind of stuff they don't want to talk about. They don't want you to see. I don't want any lives to be lost. But the question you have to come back to again and ask yourself, do occupied people have the right to resist? Now, Joe Biden issued a statement after the attack. And there's a couple of things I want to point out in this statement too that I think are very telling. Listen to this.
Say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves.
Whenever you hear them make this statement that they can continue to defend themselves, notice you never hear them say that the Palestinian people should have the right to defend themselves. So I ask you again, do occupied people have the right to resistance?
You know, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in the space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas.
And Joe Biden says this as though this has not been happening to Palestinian people all these years. And when it happens to the Palestinian people, Joe Biden doesn't come and make a press conference. These presidents, the politicians, they don't come and make a press conference and say, it's terrible what happened to the Palestinians that were in the school that was bombed. It's terrible what happened to those kids. They don't come and say that. They don't even talk about it. Because they've shown you multiple times that a Palestinian person's life in that particular region, it don't matter to them. It don't matter to them because they are in bed with the Israeli lobby. This all goes back to money, people. You see, Israel can do something for the U.S. government, and the U.S. government can do something for Israel monetarily. The Palestinian people can't do anything for the U.S. government. So this is how the U.S. government treats other countries and people that can't do anything for us monetarily. This is what you got to bring it back to, people. This is why they can do this. This is why they will bomb people in Somalia, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Yemen. These are not people that can help us monetarily. So they are willing to just say, yes, Joe Biden rolls out $8 billion to send to Israel. $8 billion. Just like that, overnight. But they don't want to give you anything. Nothing. So the Palestinian people are just supposed to die? If someone comes to your house and they tell you, get out your house, it's mine now, you're not supposed to push back? Let him continue.
Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar is unconscionable. You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults.
But we do not stand, and this is the thing I want you to take home, guys. You never hear them say they stand with the Palestinians. You never hear them say that. Never.
Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks. And my administration's support for Israel's security is rock solid and unwavering. Let me say this as clearly as I can.
For Israel's security. You see that?
This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching. I've also been in contact with the King of Jordan, spoken with members of Congress, directed my national security team to engage with their Israeli counterparts, military to military, intelligence to intelligence, diplomat to diplomat, to make sure Israel has what it needs. I've also directed my team to remain in constant contact with leaders throughout the region, including
to make sure that Israel has what it needs. And you have the people, the Palestinians, that have been living in an open air prison. And there was never that concern or question to make sure that they had what they needed. Never.
Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Oman, the UAE, as well as our European partners and the Palestinian Authority. It's also a terrible tragedy on a human level. It's hurting innocent people. Seeing the lives that have been broken by this, the families torn apart, it's heartbreaking.
But when the innocent Palestinians were killed, no comment. No comment. You know what you do with oppression? You teach two different groups of people that one life is better than the other. So for the Palestinians, they've been taught that the Israeli people are better than them. And not everyone in Israel agrees with what the government is doing. Not everyone in Israel agrees with what the state government of Israel is actually doing to the Palestinians. I want to make that very clear. But you teach them that they are less than. And oppressed people have to deal with that type of trauma the rest of their lives. So for the Palestinians, for those who ever get a chance to get out, if they get out, they still have that oppression to deal with. They still have that trauma. Now, who else went through this? African Americans had to go through it. Indigenous people had to go through it. When the settlers, when the colonialists came to the United States or came to North America and pushed the indigenous people out, killed them, and what was left of them told them, you get this little bit of land, it's called a reservation, and this where you stay. What did that do to the psyche of indigenous people in this country? This type of trauma, this type of oppression, it lasts with people for a long time, and not just with the people that it happened to, but their kids and their grandparents' kids. We need to think about that.
Jill and I are praying for those families who've been impacted by this violence. We grieve with those who've lost their loved ones, lost a piece of their soul. We have hope for swift recovery for many who have been wounded. But we're going to remain in close touch with Prime Minister. I personally am going to remain in close contact with Prime Minister Netanyahu as this situation continues to develop. And let there be no mistake, the United States stands with the state of Israel, just as we have from the moment the United States became the first nation to recognize Israel 11 minutes after its founding 75 years ago. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, was there an intelligence failure?
See, he's already just ready to go right off the stage. And this is what our government wants us to do. They want us to just pretend like nothing has been happening to the Palestinian people. I'm going to show you this video of this young girl in just a second, but I want to show you this first. Now, this is from Gritty's The Way, because I want you to understand what this is really about. Were there not in Israel, the United States would have to go out and invent in Israel to protect her interests in the region. Listen to this. This is Joe Biden, and this was from C-SPAN. Shout out to Gritty The Way for finding this.
We look at the Middle East. I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make.
Money.
Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. We look at the Middle East. I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
That part right there is very important. That if there wasn't an Israel, the U.S. would have to invent one to protect our interest in the region. I hope everybody remembers that. Somebody feel free to clip that and share that, because that's very telling. But I want to show you this little girl. I remember I covered this when this story first broke. She's only 10 years old. I covered this story. This is before I did live streams. It's still on my channel. You can find it. And I said to myself, like, hopefully this resonates with people and this gets through to people. Because this little girl, she's not a one-off.
I don't know. I can't do anything. All of this. What? I'm always sick. I don't know. I can't do anything. All of this. What do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything anymore. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people, but I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this? My family said they just hate us. They just don't like us because we are Muslims. Why does Muslims act for you like that? We're just kids. You see all of the kids around me? They're just kids. Why wouldn't you just send a missile to them and kill them?
I wanted everybody to see this because, like I said before, these are just kids. This is a residential area. That girl is only 10 years old. But because it's a Palestinian girl, we're told we're really not supposed to support. To make it worse, people lost their damn mind on social media yesterday. People lost their damn mind. One of them that lost their mind was Charlie Kirk. We're going to start with him first. I'm going to tell you how some of the things that people were doing. Some people were just outright lying. So Charlie Kirk, he deleted this tweet, but that's okay because I got the screenshot, okay? I said, if you zoom in and look at the uniform, you would see these are Israeli soldiers, people showing their whole ass today. So let me show you what Charlie Kirk said because he tried to lie. He said, warning, horrifying video of Hamas militants going door to door, killing Israeli citizens. So when this video was still posted, all I had to do was zoom in on the video to see the uniform that those soldiers were wearing. So when you saw the uniform, there was a badge. So you knew that was the Israeli badge. So I knew that was not Hamas. Those were actually Israeli soldiers. And Charlie Kirk was out here telling people that this was Hamas going door to door, killing Israeli citizens. Over thousands of people were liking that tweet. So either one or two things happened. Either he didn't take the time to actually zoom in and look at the uniforms of the soldiers. He saw someone else tweet this video and thought he tweeted as well and used the same language. Or he did know and he was trying to lie. I think it was the latter because he deleted it. How could you be so careless? A lot of people were riled up by this yesterday. Charlie Kirk, that's one of them. Then we go on to Hakeem Jeffries, who decided for whatever reason that he thinks that Israel was supposed to be the sixth borough, which he said before. Hakeem's from New York. He's another one. He was the first one that I saw lie about what's been happening between Israel, the Israelis and Palestinians. He said, my statement on the violent, unprovoked, and despicable terrorist attack by Hamas against the state of Israel. What we want to focus on is the word unprovoked. Because you see, a lot of the Democrat politicians got their talking points yesterday. They got their PR talking point, and they were all using the same damn words. Same words, same language. Some of the Republicans too. You're going to see some of them too. Watch this. I strongly condemn the violent and ghastly attack by the terrorist organization Hamas on the Jewish people and the state of Israel. The loss of life in Israel as a result of the violent, calculated, and unprovoked attack by Hamas is heartbreaking. I'm going to tell you why unprovoked is a lie. You brutalize these people for years. You strip their land from them. You put them in an open air prison. You bomb them whenever you feel like it. Residential buildings, hospitals, schools. And you say that it's unprovoked? What were the Palestinian people supposed to do? Just die? Just sit back and continue to take it? This is the talking point they all have. America stands firmly and unequivocally with Israel. We will strongly support Israel's right to defend herself from this despicable attack that targeted civilians, including Israeli children, with rockets, gunfire, and violent kidnappings. The Congress must stand with Israel until the invasion by Hamas has been crushed and security in southern Israel and throughout the country has been permanently restored. Let's talk about security. I thought it was a little bit strange that all of a sudden, the other night, Israeli security just seemed to not be around. That was interesting to me. So that's something I still question. The way that they have been treating the Palestinian people, all of a sudden, one night, they just not around, take a break. People need to think about that. But Hakeem Jeffries is lying. It's really disgusting to me when I see black people, we'll go to the second part when you're ready, Eric. When I see black people sit up here and not stand up for the Palestinian people, it is very disgusting and disturbing to me. At one point in time, black people, African Americans in this country stood strong with the Palestinian struggle. What happened? You got Uncle Toms like Hakeem Jeffries that decided he wanted to build a political career. And in order to do that, he knew he had to suck up to the right people and the right fucking lobby. Him, Richie Torres, these people. It's disgusting. And you should be ashamed of yourself. Then there was RFK Jr. And yesterday, RFK Jr. lost some supporters because RFK went on this tangent. And honey, I'm surprised he has not deleted this yet. People were handing him the business yesterday because of this. So RFK says this ignoramus, unprovoked. See this? See the talking point? Unprovoked. So now you have RFK Jr. using the same language as Hakeem Jeffries. What that tell you about RFK? We'll go on. This ignominious, unprovoked, and barbaric attack on Israel must be met with world condemnation and unequivocal support for the Jewish state's right to self-defense. We must provide Israel with whatever it needs to defend itself now. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, some of RFK's supporters yesterday realized this is not a peace candidate. This is not a peace candidate. He goes on to say, as president, I'll make sure that our policy is unambiguous so that the enemies of Israel will think long and hard before attempting aggression of any kind. I applaud the strong statements of support from the Biden White House for Israel in her hour of need. However, the scale of these attacks means it is likely that Israel will need to wage a sustained military campaign to protect its citizens. Statements of support are fine, but we must follow through with unwavering, same vocabulary as Biden, resolute and practical action. America must stand by our ally throughout this operation and beyond as it exercises its sovereign right to self-defense. And with this one statement, RFK Jr. showed people that motherfucker was not that much different from the people who are already in DC. Because some people, some politicians, some of these candidates, they good when it comes to the war in Ukraine. And they say, no, we do not need to be giving them any more money. We need to call for peace. But change the country and see how they move. Change Ukraine and put in Israel. Change Ukraine and put in China and see what their response is. He lost some supporters yesterday. One of them is Kim Iverson. You know, this was very bold of Kim because she's interviewed, you know, RFK and, you know, he likes her. I think he said he likes coming onto her show, but Kim did not hold back yesterday. And this is just one of the tweets. Kim said, and there goes my Kennedy vote out the window. And she wasn't the only one. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There were many. Out the window. Because what RFK Jr. is essentially saying is he is supporting giving Israel aid and weapons to potentially commit a genocide of the Palestinian people, because that's what would happen. They would wipe them out. She went on to say, here's RFK Jr. losing votes as he advocates for Israel to carpet bomb Gaza and continue to create the very situation that provoked the current events. If you lock people into a small area, deny them basics like water and electricity, and bomb them any chance you can excuse, they are bound to retaliate and defend themselves. I am horrified what is happening on any battlefield. War is ugly. People die. We need to advocate for peaceful resolutions to both the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the Israel-Palestine conflict. And one thing that stood out to me is notice that RFK Jr. did not call for peace. Notice he didn't call for a ceasefire. He said, give them mofos weapons so they can fight. Peace candidate my ass. I tried to tell people about this motherfucker. I tried to tell people. She went on to say, the war raging in Israel is 100% provoked and a long time brewing. Like the current Russia-Ukraine conflict, many have been warning of this for a very long time. Israel has been subjugating and torturing an entire group of people for decades. How long did anyone think they could go before rising up to defend themselves? War is horrendous. I am horrified by all who die on both sides of any war. Israel needs to get serious about negotiating a genuine good faith peace agreement with Palestine, or this will happen again and again. Again, notice the difference. She's actually calling for peace. There were more. Daniel McAdams, and if I remember correctly, I believe he spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. If I remember correctly, I think Daniel spoke. Daniel wasn't trying to hear that neither. Daniel said, wait a minute. I have never seen a presidential campaign commit suicide like this, ever. Read the comments. People who loved him 100%, repudiating their support. Everyone put a fork in him. He's done. Unbelievable. That was from Daniel. Yeah, the comments are bad, but Angela McArdle. Okay, so she is the chair of the Libertarian Party. They even had some things to say. Reminder to candidates who may seek the Libertarian Party nomination or try to gain the votes of independents. The majority of us do not support U.S. involvement in overseas military conflicts. This includes Israel. I think she means lots of us. Oh, lots of strong feelings. Lots of strong feelings over the attacks, but we shouldn't escalate things between Israel and Palestine. So when I saw this, I was like, could she possibly be talking about RFK Jr.? And then I saw this from the Libertarian Party. We are the only ones who are actually anti-war in every context, not just when it's convenient. All of the disenfranchised anti-war supporters of RFK Jr. are welcome in the Libertarian Party. And I saw that and I said, honey, I said, I guess RFK won't be running the Libertarian Party. Yikes. Wasn't just him. Ron DeSantis is whack ass. The same guy, he killed me. The same guy's like, oh, when it comes to, Ukraine and Russia, no, I don't think we should give a blank check. And, I think that we should, try to come to a peaceful resolution, but I don't really want to change the country to Israel and see the difference. Here's Ron DeSantis and his whack ass making a statement in support too. Listen.
Israel is now under attack. I stand with Israel. America stands with Israel. Not only do they have a right to defend themselves, they have a duty to defend themselves against these Iranian-backed Hamas terrorists. Iran has helped fund this war against Israel, and Joe Biden's policies that have gone easy on Iran has helped to fill their coffers. Israel is now paying the price for those policies. We're going to stand with the state of Israel. They need to root out Hamas, and we need to stand up to Iran.
You see how quickly Ron DeSantis can come out and speak firmly about his support for Israel. And just like that, boom, just take a side. No, try to call for peace or ceasefire or anything. But when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, yeah, we need to talk about peace negotiations. You see how this changed? That's because who we get money from? Who's Ron DeSantis donors? You got to make the connection. And I wasn't happy. I was not happy with Cornel West's response either. Now, he didn't say what they said, but I don't think this went well. Because Dr. West said the escalation of the barbaric violence in the Middle East must stop. The vicious Israeli occupation and the ugly Palestinian retaliation results in the killing of precious innocent people on both sides. We must have a lasting peace based on justice. Here's the problem. Actually, let me do it this way. This is one of those times where you can't both sides. You can't both sides it. Because again, go back to the question I asked you at the very beginning of this story. Do occupied people have a right to resistance? If someone comes in and they occupy your land and your home and they limit to you to this small amount of space in an open air prison, and they tell you how you can and what cannot move, and they bomb you whenever they feel like it, 95% of the drinking water is dirty, like they cut off the electricity when they feel like it, they treat you like an animal. What are the Palestinian people supposed to do? So for me, it's just, I think that Dr. West wanted to do, well, let's call for, peace. We need to stop this, that kind of thing. And I get that. But you can't both sides oppression. The people who are oppressed and the people who are occupied, those people they don't have the power. They don't have the resources. Israel controls all the resources. They can control the water. They control the electricity. They control the air, and they're backed and funded by the US government. The Palestinian people are the minority. So in a sense, it's like when you say, like, you know, on both sides, ugly Palestinian retaliation or resistance. So you say, well, what are those people supposed to do? And I know, because like Dr. West, like, remember Dr. West was denied tenure at Harvard because he stood up for the Palestinian people, because he was like, no. So like, I don't know what's happening here. I really don't. So I was disappointed to see that, because I'm like, no, we know what the deal is here. Even Afeni was disappointed by it. Afeni said, this is the most disappointing shit I've ever seen. One side has actively and aggressively stolen land from the other. One side beats people while they pray in one of the holiest places in Islam. Palestinian people should be defending themselves. Because I'm going to let you guys know something right now. If you came to my house and you tell me this is mine and you got to move out, or you can only occupy yourself, you can only stay in this one room of your house, you ain't coming through the door without a fight. Because you come try to take my land, you come try to take my property from me, you're going to have to catch these hands. So should the Palestinian people just sit back? This is the problem. So that one came from Afeni. Now, there was another statement, and Eric, when you have that one, let me know. There was another statement that was issued by Dr. West's campaign on the website. Now, this is different from what is said on Twitter, but unfortunately, the thing is the Twitter statement went out first. So people saw that first, and for people not looking on the website, most of them have not seen this statement. So I'm going to show the other statement. The other people I showed you, by the way, their statements ain't fucking changed. So there's nothing for me to show you with them. So this is what he said on the website. So this is a little bit more detailed. Dr. West calls for immediate cessation of violence in the Holy Land and an end to illegal occupation of Palestinians. Urges Western colonial powers to be conscious of their rhetoric and to push for peace, not war. So it goes on to say, I just want to make it bigger. Independent presidential candidate Dr. West today urged for peace in the Holy Land upon learning about the situation in Palestine and Israel that has already left hundreds dead and even more people injured. For this to occur on the Jewish Sabbath, on the day when the festival of Sukkot reaches its conclusion and Jewish siblings around the globe celebrate Shemtat Torah, the joy associated with their holy book is heartbreaking and a call for global action, explained Dr. West. He continued, until the global community holds up the value of precious Palestinian lives in line with the value of precious Jewish lives, this violent cycle of death and destruction will continue unabated. Dr. West called for an immediate cessation of all violence, including violent rhetoric uttered by certain Western nations. He shared, Western nations and colonial powers from right here in the United States and the European Union must be conscious of their language as their situation unfolds. We need not allow our words to act as fuel to exacerbate a fire that's been burning for too many decades. He added, President Biden and other world leaders must spend less time conjuring a fog of war with subjective and violent vernacular associated with who does and who doesn't have the right to defend themselves, and more time evoking a language of love and dignity for all people involved. And then it goes on to say here, a well-known Christian with roots in liberation theology, Dr. West called on a global community to immediately commence a discussion that will end the war between Israel and Palestine once and for all. We all desire to manifest the beautiful scripture of Isaiah 2:4. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. However, this is not to be a reality until Israel and Western nations understand that the pathway to and for peace in the Holy Land must be parallel with a pathway to and for liberation and dignity for Palestine. Dr. West offers his prayers, his love, and his condolences for the lives lost and injured, and his hopes for immediate and lasting de-escalation initiatives. So that's a better response than the tweet, but I still don't think that was the best response. Out of all the responses between those who are politicians and those who are political candidates, I really do think Claudia de la Cruz had the best response. She said, today, those supporting colonialism and Zionism will demonize Palestine for asserting its right to take back what has been violently taken. Today, the world says, long live self-determination, long live resistance, free, free Palestine, long live Palestine. Because I felt that Claudia was addressing the fact that it's their land, it was violently taken, and they have the right to defend their self. And when we hear politicians say that Israel has the right to defend their self, but they won't say that the Palestinians have the right to defend their self, what they're telling you is that the Palestinians don't have that right according to them. They're telling you that it's okay for the Palestinians to remain in the open air prison and to deal with the abuse. And I don't agree with that. So that was from Claudia de la Cruz. She was on the show recently. She's running for president 2024. And I really thought that she had the best response from anyone who's a candidate and a politician. I can tell you about Jill Stein's response too, which I saw right before I went live, but she's not a candidate, at least not yet, if possible. And she's not a politician right now. But first and foremost, I want to show you this, because when we talk about other countries, there are protests all across the United States. There are also protests in other countries for the Palestinian people. People in Turkey rose up to protest in favor of the Palestinian fight. And also Saudi Arabia. And this is very telling, because Saudi Arabia is supposed to be a U.S. ally, although they also have been invited to join BRICS too. So Saudi kind of moving how they want to move these days. And they issued this statement. Official statement from the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia holds Israel responsible for what happened due to its repeated provocations and deprivation of rights of Palestinians. U.S. ally. Saudi Arabia said that. You can see the actual letter here. There we go. Here we go. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is closely following developments in the unprecedented situation between a number of Palestinian factions and the Israeli occupation forces, which has resulted in a high level of violence taking place on a number of fronts there. The kingdom calls for an immediate halt to the escalation between the two sides, the protection of civilians, and restraint. The kingdom is reminded of its repeated warnings of the danger of an explosive situation as a result of the continued occupation and deprivation of the Palestinian people of their rights, legitimacy, and repeated systematic provocations against its sanctities. The kingdom renews its call on the international community to assume its responsibilities and activate a credible peace process that leads to a two-state solution in a way that achieves security and the peace in the region and protects its civilians. And I told you guys, I don't agree with a two-state solution. And I said before, because there's too many settlements, there's no way that would work out. But Saudi Arabia out here letting you know I don't know what the US government is doing, but we are not about that life. And it's very telling. Eric, can we pull up Jill Stein? Jill Stein said something right before I went live. And I just want people to understand, I don't want anyone to be abused. I don't want anyone to die. I don't want anything. I don't want this violence to happen to people. And I don't want the Palestinian people to have to continue to live in this prison. I don't want them to feel like they're not free, to not be able to free to walk about their own freaking land. If you have politicians like Joe Biden, if you can congratulate and you can speak highly of people like Nelson Mandela fighting back against apartheid in South Africa, but you ignore the Palestinian struggle and fight in Israel, who are you? How can you sit there and pretend like they're not going through the same thing? This was Jill Stein's response. When a murderous occupation makes peaceful resistance impossible, it makes violent resistance inevitable. Free Palestine. Lana said she got that right. Free Palestine. Let me go to the comments on Rockfin, Eric, and then I'll get the ones on YouTube. Sabrina, it is any surprise that the U.S. government is on the side of the occupier, since that is the same way they got this land. Sabby got Mommy Meadows upset talking about this issue, LOL, then got reminded of the migrant issue. Then my born-again Christian sister starts talking about it's not going to end until Jesus comes back. And then Mommy rolls her eyes and we both start laughing. There she goes again. Thank you for this as well. Sabrina, Uncle Professor Leonard Jeffries is still for Palestinians. Unfortunately, nephew Hakeem Jeffries is not. These people chose to turn a blind eye when me, Lucy, and the gang exposed RFK for what he was back in July. Imagine if we were able to get the same level of indignation of RFK not supporting reparations. Bingo. Because when I tell you that I don't play that shit, like the number of Zionists that all of a sudden exist on social media, people showed their whole ass yesterday. Very nasty comments. Thank you, Echo J. Why did the UN decide Palestinians should take the L after World War II when it was Nazi Germany that displaced and murdered Jews? Israel should be in Europe. Honey, you got some questions today. That's a good question. Thank you, Apazamosi. Seeing how the West has united in its support for Israel, plus how we're demonizing Palestinians, is terrifying. What Ukraine couldn't achieve has been achieved by destabilizing the Middle East again. Thank you, Marvin. Who has Israel's back as they do crimes? USA. Thanks, Regine. Thank you, Sabby. It's all about money. Speak the truth, Sabby. According to our president, Jewish life is more precious than Palestinian. Sounds familiar. Thank you, Yasim. Thank you, Sabby. Thank you for your exemplary journalism job. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Marvin. Israel will blame Iran for this. World War III. US dollars for Zion. More US dollars for Zion. Thank you, Keith. Someone should confront him with that video of that girl and tell him he's for that. He is an absolutely grotesque, barbaric Kennedy. Israel will never accept him anyway, so I don't see his point. Thanks, Phil. Love to Palestinians and Sabby from a libertarian. Shout out to the Phil. Shout out to a kid. Sabby, how quickly Joe Biden stepped up for Israel and still Hawaiians in Maui are still waiting for help. And in Flint, how is that possible? That's right. Thank you, R. Bailey, for the super sticker. Penguins in the house. Penguins in the house. And thank you, John. U.S. media blocking out pro-Palestinian marches in the States. Yep. You got to take it to indie media. If you follow Chuck Modi on Twitter, he's actually covering, he has a couple of clips from DC. There's some people showing clips from New York. And I believe Code Pink has clips posted as well.